I believe the YouTube channel by the name of Tree of Knowledge has provided for me the missing link, Samvartaka fires. I'd never heard that term before, but it coincides with a lot of what I've been saying and a lot of what I've heard, and it fills in a lot of the gaps in my knowledge and understanding of what's going on here. So, just going to recap 2 minutes of a previous video that I made. I'll leave a link to the trailer in the description because there's a bunch of different movies called The Pulse. But it's the idea that the electricity itself is conscious, and that's what James True said in one of his recent streams, is that we still think of electricity as a dead entity like oil or gold or anything else. A commodity. Because we're too afraid to conceive of it as living consciousness. And that's the idea in The Pulse, is that it becomes alive. And that's the idea that Daydreamer Z says about the plasma, that it's been personified in a bunch of different movies where it comes and only picks off the bad guys. And John Keane keeps repeating in his videos that they keep telling us, and I've heard it elsewhere too, that China has directed energy weapons that can pick off a single person, which would cover for the effects when we see this happening. But the alternative explanation might be that the plasma is living consciousness. And then you have to take into account things like Paradise, California. Those couldn't have all been bad people, right? And you got the DOD, Department of Defense head, coming out and taking a podium saying that directed energy weapons have been developed in China and Russia that are capable of long-range fires. Those would be the natural plasma fires I've been reporting and documenting, and they don't want you knowing it's a natural phenomenon. They want you thinking that it is technological. That way you still have obedience to their authority. As soon as the public knows that it is a natural phenomenon that is out of their hands and beyond their control, they're out of power. So they would fake a world war to cover for these incoming planetary objects and all the disturbances that they will create, and give you cover stories about directed energy weapons to cover for the natural phenomenon and say it is man-made. And then they will do the reverse, where they will say that they're man-made directed energy weapons are natural phenomenon. They're weather modification, etc. In Hinduism and Jainism, Samvartaka is a divine force or power normally used by the deity Indra. Described as being a cloud of energy or fire, the force is used to destroy or despoil that which displeases Indra. The force is referenced to in Hindu and Jainist text. Samvartaka is also strongly associated with comets. You just heard me mention that incoming planetary system that is associated with all the environmental changes we're seeing. Now, in that description of Samvartaka fires, it says that it destroys that which displeases Indra. I don't know about Indra, but in a recent video I spoke about Shiva, the destroyer, and how Kali, which is also Shiva the Destroyer, which is a statue they have in front of CERN, they're giving an ode and a tribute to Kali when they stick out their tongue. Everyone from Bad to the Bone, George Thorogood and the Destroyers, to Miley Cyrus and her repeated demonstration of sticking out her tongue. It's an ode to Kali.
Thin crust pizza or something, right? Probably not thin crust pizza, but so what happens to him when he eats it?
Hold on.
Well, just like
Don't worry about this.
When you put leavening in it, it blows up.
Okay,
so
never mind that.
He blows up and loses a life.
Here we go.
Then they get to this interesting room where there's this basket, and the basket on the very top has a spiral. Can you see that right there? So this represents the plasma of our world. Okay, sometimes the symbolism is on a big scale, sometimes it's on a small scale. Right now it's on a small scale. The plasma of our world wrapped around the dome or the top or the covering, the roof, whatever you want to call it. And then what happens when he opens it? There's a snake. The snake symbolism once again, right? So the snake symbolism is plasma symbolism as well. And of course, we're not looking at the movie just to be entertained or amused, but we're looking at it as a deeper esoteric level. What does it mean on the grander scheme of our existence, of our world, and our history, or our hidden history, right? Oh, I was missing stuff in the chat. I'm so sorry. Alright, stuff in the chat. I'm so sorry. Alright, hold on. Let me get this comment. Cassia is in the chat and says, J Dreamers, do you still have the same date in mind for the plasma apocalypse? I feel like it's ramping up. I hate talking about dates, honestly, so I'm not even gonna... Like, every time I say the date that I feel, like, a billion people misquote me and say, J Dreamer said it's going to happen right here, you know, on this particular... It's like, dude, I hate talking about when it's going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? I'd rather people just pretend like it's just going to happen tomorrow, every day. So go prepare. Like, go get ready. Go get right with God, or whatever you got to do. That's kind of how I feel about it. Let's see. So he says, trust one another. Can't talk. Trust one another and never blink. Never blink. So they're trying to figure out this riddle, right? And what to do with this snake. Now, the snake escaping out of its container represents the plasma entering into our world from above. And he says, you guys, I think it's a staring contest. Never blink. So now what he's recommending is to stare into the deadlights, essentially. Into the plasma that comes into our world, into Medusa's hair, eyes, whatever you want to call it. He's
Shiva's serpent.
that you stare into it, right? Nah, they try that. He almost got his face bit off. He's like, I guess it wasn't a staring contest. It was not. Trust each other and never blink. Meaning, don't rest, don't stop. Like, this is your moment, okay? Be aware, be sober-minded, be conscious of what's happening around you. Help each other out. Like, when the stuff's hitting the fan, you're going to be able you're going to need to be able to think on your toes, okay? So that ends up being the actual thing. And the opposite of that might hold true as well. If it's not a staring contest, they might actually be saying it's not a good idea to stare into the pretty lights as the world comes to an end, because I'm sure it's going to look beautiful. I'm sure it's going to look amazing. But just like Lot's wife found out, I wouldn't hang out and check out the fireworks for too long if I was you. So, then they open up the basket. There's a little clue in there for them, Jinky. When you see the elephant, begin the climb. Interesting. I'm going to come back to the elephant here in just a bit, because I want to talk about these other pictures and as we wrap things up. So she has to walk through all these snakes in order to get to this emerald green light. Now, as she's walking through the snakes, it reminded me of Indiana Jones whenever he was surrounded by all the snakes and stuff. And it also reminded me of the story I was telling all of you. When you go into the Cave of Saviors, or any cave for that matter, that's significantly charged enough, you'll see the plasma starts to come out from the walls itself in little snake-like hands that reach out, whoosh, trying to bite or trying to grab or whatever you imagine that they're trying to do. And that's the symbolism that I've been seeing here too. So this guy takes the...
As we watch this clip from a recent Mr. MB3 video, remember that it said Samvartaka fires are associated with comets.
And has been slowly sliding west to east across the bottom of the planet. That's what it looks like right there. And if you come over here to the National Data Buoy Center, and you can see the map kind of reveals the same type of surface feature. I'm sure that's not what happened, but that's what it looks like. Looks like a small moon or something collided with the planet. And here recently it has been quaking like crazy down in that area. Multiple 7s, multiple 6s. In fact, today alone there's been a 6.8 and a 7.2, may have been downgraded to a 7.0. We're going to come back and take a look at that here in a moment. Also in this video, I've got some rare photos to share with you guys of recent lightning strikes that caught vehicles on fire. One not too far from where I'm sitting out here in Arizona, Santan Valley, Arizona. The vehicle you're looking at here was sitting out in front of its house during one of our recent monsoons we had out here that was loaded with lightning, and a lightning strike made contact with his truck and caught it on fire. Same exact thing occurred up in Canada near Manitoba. You can see a truck on fire over here on the left. That's the same vehicle over here on the right, completely engulfed in flames from a lightning strike. All of this occurred in the last week up in Canada and right out here in Arizona. And those are the areas that we know of. It very well could have occurred in more places. Also in the...
What he's saying is that if we know of these 2, it definitely happened in other places. And these are just 2 from within the last week. meaning within the last week there was also other places.
And right out here in Arizona. And those are the areas that we know of. It very well could have occurred in more places.
And this he refers to when he talks about this photo that was sent in to him as it looks like a giant moon. Maybe one of these planetary objects. Maybe a plasma dome, which I spoke of on my way out to Missouri, that a hedge of protection can be provided to you in the form of a personal protection bubble, or larger cities, or a house, or a personalized protection bubble. A plasma dome. So I've done previous videos. Mike Morales featured one of these trucks that got struck by lightning, along with people that have died in these mysterious lightning strikes. I'm not going to be able to include all those links in the description from now on. I'll just be saying watch my previous videos. Also, the snakes inside the cave that are actually filaments of plasma that Jay Dreamers was talking about earlier in this video. Those filaments of plasma may be what's actually being depicted in Shiva's serpents. Shiva the Destroyer, or Kali, one and the same. And that cave that I just acquired may have been more of something like a dedication ceremony. And the hedge of protection being provided to you personally or collectively through one of these plasma bubble domes may be more appropriate. Moving on.
Yeah, I've got a brand new picture slideshow, new sky phenomenon photos, sent in from all around the world. Going back down to the southern hemisphere, Christchurch, New Zealand. Photos sent in by Steve R. of what appears to be a rare fog bow. Almost looks like a giant moon setting over there on the horizon. Fog bows are kind of rare. I've probably only received a handful of photos of fog bows over the years, but I've never seen one that was completely filled in the center. They've always looked like albino rainbows. This one here is completely filled in. Looks like a giant moon setting on the horizon. Out Oklahoma, video footage sent in by R. Stevens of some strobe lightning. Saw this in Nebraska here about a week or so ago. More of it appearing now above Oklahoma. This next clip was sent in by Potter, not exactly.
You hear that? We saw this just a week ago. More of it now. And this lightning is increasing. And that is what Tree of Knowledge, who enlightened me to Samvartaka fires, spoke of, is that we will reach a point where the earth is like one big giant lightning magnet with electricity just crawling all over the ground. So what Mr. MB3 is going to show you here is two different examples in one video, but he splits them up. He doesn't show them side by side in this video, as to probably not lead too many people to the understanding if they're not already really close, because if they're not already close, it's going to throw them into shock. But he's going to show you a couple of different genetic mutations on a tomato, and the other one's like a papaya fruit or something. And I've gone over videos previously where he shows you tomatoes with sprouts coming out of the tomato right here, right out of the skin. Like the seeds inside the tomato are sprouting and growing right out of the tomato. Also sunflowers, where from within the middle of the sunflower, where the seeds are supposed to be, is emerging yellow and green leaves, like another sunflower is growing right out of the middle of the sunflower. There for a while, he showed you people sending him photos of clovers, giant clovers the size of the palm of your hand. Not just 4-leaf clovers, but 5, 6, and 7-leaf clovers, and not just ones they'd picked, but ones that are still right there on the ground, so you can see that one's still growing there, that one's still growing there. They didn't come from far and wide, and I didn't spend hours and days searching for these. There's a 5-leaf, there's a 6-leaf, there's one that's the size of your palm of your hand. These are all genetic mutations, proving what I said on a recent video that was actually a recap of one of my original videos when I went to the quick trip and said, you can join us if you want, join our team, and that this is the fruits of my labor, and that this is the proof when I was out there walking around in that radioactive dust, and that I said it was radioactive at the time, and I knew that was the case, but I did it anyway. This is the proof. MB3 during the summer of 2019 showed the UV readings, UVA, UVB, and UVC. And each time he did, he would say UVC should be 0 at ground level. And I understand people can't stand that he does this tone and it's an act, but whatever. He would tell you every time UVC should be 0 at ground level other than in the Arctic where there's no magnetic field to block out the UVC. This is radiation causing genetic mutations. He has shown us everything from strawberries sprouting out the side. They've even come up with a new name to normalize these strawberries that put sprouts right out the edge of the strawberry. Sunflowers, tomatoes, clovers. He showed us bell peppers with a hole burned in the bell pepper like the sun itself burned a hole in the bell pepper. Carrots that were growing in a bunch where they had all grown together, like this one sprouting another tomato or two right out the top of this tomato. Carrots doing the same thing. So when I kept repeating, take your iodine, iodine protects you from radiation and fills your thyroid with the good halogen. That way your body doesn't uptake the other halogens like fluoride, chlorine, and bromine. That was words to the wise. Do not take potassium iodine pills. Take liquid iodine. It's about $10 or $7 or $8 for one of these cheap bottles. You don't have to buy the nascent iodine, the high-end expensive stuff. One of these bottles will probably last you 10 years. Potassium iodine pills are for emergency only, like when nuclear fallout happens and you have to have something, but it's very hard on your body to take on a regular basis. This is made from seaweed kelp, so it has multiple benefits. And it doesn't have to be this particular type or brand. Just don't do the potassium iodine pills is what I'm saying.
What's up, guys? Hope everybody's doing well and having a great day. In this video, I've got some randomly weird observations that have been sent in to me here recently. I'm going to share them with you in this video. You're looking at one right here out of Eugene, Oregon. Just a tomato sent in by Terry G. But you can see it's not just any ordinary tomato. For some reason, this thing has a strange deformity on the top of the tomato that looks like a set of horns growing out of the top of the tomato. Once again, this photo was sent in by Terry G. out of Eugene, Oregon. Also in this video, I've got a... We move forward in time, look for a landfall in about 24 hours. I want to take you guys now over to Portugal, where Carlos Skywatcher shared this video with me. Carlos is known for his incredible sunsets, but he happened to notice this rare fig as he was picking figs off of a fig tree the other day. This is a fig inside of a fig. Doesn't have anything to do with sky phenomena. I know that. It's just unique. He's never seen anything like that before, and he's picked figs his entire life. That is truly bizarre. Kind of reminds me of the tomato, some sort of a rare anomaly that you just don't normally see, and that again is a fig growing inside of a fig. And speaking of strange, we've all seen smoke plumes.
My mistake. He did put them both together in that clip. But if he compiled all of the genetic mutations, just like that tomato and this fig that he's done in the last 2 years, there's about 6 or 7 or 8, and he's not going to do that for those who can't see it, because if they can't see it, then it's going to throw them into shock that they didn't pay attention and come to this understanding incrementally. And here's another level of understanding that must be acquired gradually and incrementally. This is a screenshot from a video that Mr. MB3 here put out. I made this video on May 4th, 2019, and I titled it, How to Train Your Plasma-Powered Thunderbird. Someone sent this image into him and said, I think they were on board a Navy vessel out in the middle of the ocean, and they took this picture right here. So I didn't include a link in this video from the original that Mr. MB produced that I took this screenshot from because it was May 4th, 2019. My radical transformation happened on April 19th, 2019 and April 19th, 2018. So I was still reeling, and I didn't include the link in the description of this video of the original where I took it from. And that's going to be the case from now on. I'll be answering questions with see my previous videos. And I won't be able to include links in the description for everything anymore because we're moving forward quickly now. And for those that didn't keep up, you're not going to be able to catch up. And this is going to be from now on, it's going to be for those that kept up or who were willing to spend the time to go back and watch my previous videos. Like Passing By 33 said, God, watching all of his old videos, that would take fucking ages. Well, I suggest you do that or prioritize other things to be more important. That's up to you. So back to the Samvartaka fires and other associated anomalies and phenomenon that come with the territory. When I remembered I made this video, I started to watch the first of it, and so I opened up that video with the pulse as the thumbnail, and it starts out with Mr. Fix-It 1979 showing us plasma fire spots in his grass, and I'm going to show you some more things that he sent me also. But this is how that started out. This is his original video.
What the heck's that?
And I do freeze frames to where you can see,
work with me.
you can see it better.
There we go.
There we go.
There, right? See? Come up a little bit. Right there.
This guy's also sent me other video I'm going to show you. Of the
Now, it's not anything else in my yard, okay? It's not on anything else, okay? A tree that was chopped down a while ago, before I moved in this. Just in those spots in my yard, right? Nothing else. So, I don't know what to make of it. I mean, there's burned poles all around this place, so.
I'm going to show you those.
All right, buddy. Have a good day.
So now I'm going to go over some of the screenshots that I took from his video. Where you can see that there's isolated burn spots in the grass. At the end, I'm also going to show you, I'm going to recommend a channel, My Skies 5D. He plays good music over a bunch of sky monsters. And he just did a live stream with Vanessa VA, and I might be included on the next one. Well, he does, and he gets away with playing good music over it. So it makes it kind of more enjoyable to watch. So I'll include the link in the description. You can watch the rest of this video where he shows you these plasma fire spots from within his yard. Little tiny plasma fire spots. And so when I opened up that video and saw Mr. Fix-It 1979's original contribution, he's also sent me video of where they're putting lag bolts into the telephone poles about 2 or 3 foot high, probably as a energy release valve so it doesn't just burn from the inside, to give that energy a place to release. It reminded me, he sent me some other gravy that I haven't covered yet. Like when he looked out into his backyard and saw the grass looking like fiber optics where just the tips were lit up. Also, showing me that his transmission is reaching temperatures hotter than it should be. Just as I've cited previous examples of people's engines overheating. I can't find any coolant on the shelf, like it's blowing the coolant right out the radiator cap because it's only meant to ride at a certain temperature, and anything above that, it releases the spring valve on the radiator cap to allow some pressure to release. Well, now they're constantly riding at a higher temperature. I told you about the guy whose arm was burned up from the oil because he's like a trucker. He said, my tranny was riding hot, so I pulled over in Green River to check my oil because I figured it must be low on oil. And no, it was full of oil, ran all down my arm, and I see the bandage on his arm while he's telling this other trucker that. And they're both talking about how their engines were riding hotter than ever, and it's only 90 degrees outside. We've had 90 and 100 degree days all the time. It's the microwave frequencies locking onto the largest, densest piece of metal that works like an antenna, be it the engine block or the transmission. And so part of my correspondence was him. This is his response. Said, crazy, right? I've noticed the same thing here. Coolant shelf at the fuel stations are empty or near empty. Now, yesterday, and today, it's blazing hot and humid, but transmission temp is okay. So there must be multiple factors to this phenomenon. In other words, what he's saying is the outside temperature is still blazing hot, but now his transmission has come back down to normal temperature because the microwave frequencies lock onto your transmission and they do not increase the external ambient temperature that reads on a regular thermometer, but it does read out on your transmission. Anyway, as for the grass, because I asked him some questions about the grass. As for the grass, there was no wind. They were stationary and the dots were on the ends. Just the tips of the grass. At first I thought maybe the dew was just catching and reflecting sunlight, but I took a closer look only to see that no, it was not dew, because if it was dew, the implication there is if it was dew, drops of dew, they wouldn't just be on the tips of the blades of grass, they would be on the middle of the blades of grass and at the bottom of the blades of grass if it was dew. Because it was only on the tips, that indicates it wasn't just dewdrops catching the light and reflecting it in a unique way. So, literally, the points of light were on the very tips of the grass. I'm trying to read through the camera and watch the other one. Anyway, there were a couple of patches of it and also single blades all throughout my yard. There was no point in getting all nervous about it. If the face like the sun unleashes his mouth, sword, we're toast anyway. When it's time, you know? And that was actually, I just forwarded myself these images. This came before what we just read, chronologically. But this is what he was saying that the grass at his house looked like. Same dude that's shown me, and now he sent me 2 different videos of the plasma fire spots in the grass. The one we just watched, and a second one, but the second one was like on a Samsung cloud and the link to it expired and it was a little bit more shaky a video. But even after those original spots in his lawn disappeared, more of them reappeared while the lawn is nice and green. And he says, of course my phone was in the middle of a reboot from a software update package, so I couldn't photograph it. Otherwise, we would have photographs of the grass looking like fiber optics and probably working much the same way. In another video, I'll get to this. Somehow he sent me a 25-minute video via text message. I've never had that possibility. If that was possible, I would have never started a YouTube channel. I was just trying to send my plasma fire video to friends and family, and it wouldn't fit in an email or text message, so I started a YouTube channel. So this is the same guy that sent me that original video that shows a bunch of burning around the poles and that they're inserting these lag bolts at a 45-degree angle at about 2 or 3 feet up on the pole, which indicates that they are a release valve for this energy that builds up inside the poles in order that it just doesn't burn the pole from the inside out and has a way to release that energy back out into the air. Another thing he said is, we were talking about getting some P900 cameras or whatever. So he said, I'd love to get one. Observations today. I was on Pennsylvania State Route 8, southbound in Richland Township, where it intersects with a place called Bakerstown. I have not yet looked up the elevations or other topographical details, but for about a half-mile stretch, every single pole was burned, in some cases with chunks of charred wood laying on the ground within a few feet of the poles. Going to attempt to stop and get video tomorrow. We're waiting on that, Mr. Fix-It. Send me the video. Sorry I fell behind on the gravy that you shared with me already, but I'm catching up. We're going to watch this, but again, not now. Why? Because COVID, which is what this guy's talking about, the Pfizer vaccine and everything else, is a distraction from the larger picture that's going on. But this guy has a doctor on who talks about the amount of graphene in these injections. And the summary is that it's all a testing for dosage. Like some of them have 10 parts per million and others have 100 parts per million. and other shots have 1,000 parts per million, and they're testing to see how much the human body can withstand and the effects on the human body in order to get the person hooked up to the Wi-Fi cloud and turn you into a node on an integrated computer system that uses us as biological antenna. That's the long and short of it. And he has a doctor on who gives you the details and doesn't like to speculate as to where it's going in conspiracy theories, just gives you the scientific data. I will include that link in the description for those who want to get ahead on that video. But again, that's a distraction from what's really going down. So I'm going to have to continue this on a second video because it runs out at about 33 minutes of memory, where on my next video, I'm going to talk about the things we talked about in church on my most recent visit there, which included truth drops in movies. The guy was talking about the truth drops he got from like the movie Rocky and another movie. And they talked about in the book of Ether, where they saw the flesh and blood body of God, and he made stones glow, where he touched these different stones with his finger and made them glow. This is similar to the technology that James True was talking about, where a bull is put in a casket with a lid on it heavy enough to bake a loaf of bread, and it begins to make the marble around it glow. There are technologies that are more in alignment with the earth than the destructive type that we're using now. That is the free energy Tesla technology that they've been keeping under wraps for a long time in order to maintain the petrodollar in place, and they don't want to let go of power. So there's going to be a shift. It's going to be a bumpy road, but there is going to be on the other side of this a world not going back to the caveman days. We will have technology that has existed for a long time, like Tartarian technology. But until then, in between the two worlds, we are the living bridge in between those two worlds. And it's going to get bumpy, but there's another side on the other side of this. It's not going back to the caveman, horse and buggy days, okay? A predictive programming by Mandela and Quavo, whatever his name is. Everyone saw it before COVID hit. And then once COVID hit, it all made sense. And one of the lyrics from the songs they sing is that not everyone is coming to the future. Not everyone is learning from the past. Not everyone can come into the future. Not everyone that's here is going to last. Not everyone is coming to the future. Not everyone is coming from the past. Not everyone that's here is going to last. Okay, instead of rushing this, you'll just have to watch part 2. It might just be small, but this is Madonna's performance. This was uploaded May 19th, 2019. Good chance. These are the gifts of Baal that came April 19th, 2019. Before COVID, right around the time that I did my Missouri trip, April 19th, 2019. She sings Like a Prayer, and then that song with Quavo, not everyone's coming to the future, not everyone's coming from the past, not everyone that's here is going to last. She starts out by saying they're so naive, they think we